Real Weirdos, back in the saddle. For some reason, watching funny games. Oh, Alex, my boy. Oh, my sweet summer child. Alex has inflicted upon us today. And yes, I'm going to keep picking on you here.
Oh, that's fine.
Possibly the worst thing I've ever seen, which is interesting in and of itself. But we watched a German film from 1997 entitled Funny Games from director Michael Haneke. I might be pronouncing that wrong. I'm not certain. Interesting not only because it's completely irredeemable for reasons that we'll get into, but because he had the absolute gall to remake it shot for shot 10 years later. So, Alex, lead us off here. Why did we watch Funny Games?
Well, first, I gotta say, I mean, it's not every day that I get to show someone a movie that then turns into the worst film that they have ever seen. Especially someone like you who's seen quite a few films and who I know knows a lot about film. I actually feel kind of proud of myself. Jeff as well.
Yeah, Jeff, you enjoyed this greatly as well, did you not?
I thought that watching this movie is like having hemorrhoids. It's persistent. It just makes you irritable, and all you want is for these two little hanging sacks of flesh to just go the fuck away. And that's how I felt this entire film.
Oh man, see, I was thinking about it on a long drive home that I had today. And I thought it was like being strapped to a chair and having somebody insult you for 2 hours and like slap you in the face with like this smug little expression and you can't do anything about it. You just have to sit there and take it. We jumped over you here, Alex. Why did we watch this movie?
Well, I actually liked this movie at one point. I will freely admit. I saw it in theaters when I was about 16. And
the remake, right?
the remake, yes, excuse me. The one that was made shot for shot, albeit English-speaking actors. It has Naomi Watts in it as the wife. It has Tim Roth in it as the husband. Michael Pitt is Peter, or Paul, excuse me. And other actors doesn't even matter. It's shot for shot, like I said. So I liked it when I was young because I feel like it dealt in these themes of violence and of like this weird, weirdness, this like austere upper class American skewering, right, of society. Something meaningful was about it. And for some reason when I saw it when I was younger, it gave me this type of like itch. I was like, oh, this movie's doing lots of stuff with its postmodernism and its breaking of the fourth wall and all its meta-ness. And then I went on with my life and I, got older and watched a lot more movies and became, I guess, wiser when it came to critically looking at film and watched it again this time around after suggesting it to you all. I want to say why I suggested it as well, because of those themes that it dealt in. I thought, this could be interesting for people who like movies that just aren't the normal run-of-the-mill, romance story, drama story, whatever. It definitely isn't one of just those, right? It's definitely like a film that's trying to be something. So I thought that it would be something that would, spark some discussion. I'm deeply disappointed with myself, my 16-year-old self, for many reasons and many things, but now even more that probably that movie that I watched then and actually liking it. So yeah.
I have a couple questions for you, Alex.
Okay.
So I'm going to be
I'm
asking
ready.
a lot of questions in this episode because personally, this movie was so horrible, and we're going to make fun of it, and we're going to be funny about it, or at least we're going to try to be. That doesn't mean, like, go watch the movie. Don't watch this movie.
Don't do it.
This movie should be seen by nobody.
Don't
But before you get to your
watch it.
questions, Jeff, I think I'll just give a quick rundown about what this movie is.
Yes, please.
So a family, a German family, and or An American Family, I suppose,
Yeah.
depending on which version you watch. I only watched one of them, by the way. I could not bring myself to watch the remake.
Same.
Well, they had it's like a man and his wife and their son go to like a summer house, and some people who are ostensibly like friends of their neighbors show up. It's like two guys wearing douchey golf outfits, and then proceed to like cheekily torture this family for 2 hours. That's and at certain points they turn to the camera and say something like, "Are you enjoying this?" Or they'll say something like, "Oh no, we can't have that happen," and they'll rewind the footage. So there's some sort of meta element going throughout this, and I kept waiting for that to turn into something clever. Because, spoilers, Alex gave us no value judgments about this film. So I was expecting something good, and I kept waiting for it to take a turn. I was like, okay, they're establishing this meta element. It has to take a turn, right? And it has to take a really, like, wide or sharp turn. It has to take a sharp turn. Because what I'm watching is, by turns, awful, mean, boring at a point. Like, I understood what the movie was doing about 20 minutes in. I'm like, okay, these guys are assholes who are here to like torture this family. And then it does nothing with that for the entire film. There's some vague dialogue at the end when they're in the boat about multiple universes or something, but it's so smug and self-satisfied with how clever it thinks it's being while being not clever at all that I wanted to strangle it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree fully. This movie is so high on its own farts,
Oh,
and
God.
it's so it the director really thought that he had something unique here.
So what he was trying to do, from what I understand, is have a sort of meta commentary on the violence of film and like messing with the audience and their expectations. The problem is that the movie's not especially gratuitous, and I was too annoyed to be like shocked by anything. I was more just shocked about how awful the film was, which is interesting as well because it's not a poorly made movie technically.
Yeah.
There's some interesting shots. It's almost like you're placed as an audience member in this voyeuristic position, which you start to see pretty early on. Like, the camera will be locked down, people will walk up the stairs, and you'll just have this empty frame of stairs, and you hear things happening. So it's like the movie's placing you in these environments, and sometimes like the violence will be off screen as well, and then like a blood splatter will go to a wall. I don't know if I'm making this sound like it's well made, but my point is it's not poorly made. Like,
Yeah.
there's some decent filmmaking here. It's just that the soul of it is completely rotten,
There is no
and
soul.
anything it's trying to say is completely flatlined by its own sense of self-satisfaction with doing nothing except being awful.
Yes, fully agree. This movie is like a maggot-filled prune. like on the outside you're like, I mean, yeah, it's a prune, like I guess I'll eat it, but like, and then it's filled with maggots. You're like, oh fuck, dude, and it was a prune. Like, I don't even like prunes. This movie's horror is predictable. If you can call it horror, it's two main characters, I guess if you could call them that, are just really derivative of many other type of psycho characters that you have met before. I just didn't find anything in this movie that I haven't seen before, but like you were saying, Jesse, it's not a B movie quality. It's weird. It's like it actually is shot well, and it has like decent lighting, and I mean the script is dog shit. but
Mhm.
it has this element to it where you kind of want it to be good, and
Yeah.
it just falls flat every time.
Yeah, I mean, no, yeah, you guys, I think it's funny that, Jesse, you mentioned being strapped to a chair for 2 hours and being beaten over the face by like some people who think they're extremely witty. It very much parallels and mirrors the experience of watching this film. Um, and
You mean the experience of the characters in the film, or
I mean, just the idea of sitting in front of the screen for 2 hours and watching this film is kind of like
oh
being
right.
strapped in a chair and having some pompous, patronizing little kid just slap you and your family around. Um, it's interesting that what you said about the commentary on violence, he made it twice because he said he felt like that it would go over better with American and English speaking audiences because that's who he was really trying to, get to, I guess.
Do
Whatever.
you have do you have a better explanation as to what precisely he was trying to do with this movie?
Uh, when I was reading a small little snippet from an interview that I found online, he said that he was trying to show how violence in the American movies seemed to be over gratuitous and did like nothing to support like the story. Um, and I guess by not showing the violence in his films and just having it implied, maybe that was his remedy. That's the best explanation I feel like I can give this director.
But then
I
his,
I call bullshit.
but then it add his whatever what he was trying to do still added nothing to the plot and was like
Exactly.
it did the same thing he was thinking the violence in American movies did.
Yeah,
It makes no sense.
and then when he made the American one, the one that I watched, it there's it's like you said, Jeff, I think the two guys are like derivative. It's like these two people were like they like saw No Country for Old Men and saw Anton Chigurh, right, as the villain on there and thought like, "Oh, this is like what people do when they're violent," right? But at least that movie was clever. At least that character was interesting. And I mean, he's a force of a character in that film, not to talk about another film that's actually good, but it
Yeah.
just seemed like I, I don't know. It seemed like a movie that a young, very young person would attach to, right? Like, I guess myself. It just, I don't know. There's something about it that it should be good. It shouldn't be as bad as it is, I guess.
Well, that kind of leads me to the questions I wanted to ask you because I agree that 16-year-old me would have loved this movie. Now, granted, I didn't see the version that 16-year-old you saw.
Hmm.
The only version of this I've seen is the 97 version, and that's the only version I will ever see. But I mean, one of my questions though is, had you seen The Clockwork Orange before you saw this movie as a kid?
No, actually. That is a great question. I know for a fact that I didn't.
Okay, because that makes sense. Because I mean, when I saw this movie, I remember when I saw this movie advertised. I believe the remake.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw Clockwork Orange when I was maybe 12 or 13 for the first time. I mean, not really understanding any of the concepts, and then I read the book later. But the it's the move. This movie in particular is trying so hard to harness that raw, like violent energy. Because
Hmm.
if you think about it, Clockwork Orange isn't a violent movie. I mean, it's a hyper violent movie,
Yeah.
but it isn't. Like, it doesn't ever show any like really any blood, but behind like a little bit here or there. And it's like almost like this director thinks he gets that Kubrickian style
Yeah.
of storytelling, and he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna do my version of that, and it falls so flat, and it's so boring. Like, this is one of the more boring movies I've ever seen. It's just shot so low. It's shot unnecessarily tight on
Hmm.
a lot of the like characters when it doesn't need to be. It's like trying to add tension through tight camera work that isn't there in the dialogue and what's going on.
Yeah,
It's just
what Jesse said about the shots being really still, the really protracted scenes, and like the characters will exit, but the shot will stay. That, like, I knew that there was filmmaking technique going on, but I hated that. I hated that so much. It made the movie extremely boring for me. I don't know why, I guess, but it just was like, it was just pointless. I just thought it was fucking pointless.
The reason it's boring is because it it's operating on a single tenor, right? The only tenor it has is like, look at these irredeemable characters in this film torture this family. And you're like, okay, well, what are you going to do with that? And it doesn't do anything else with that. It just continues. It continues making you feel bad for watching it for a while, and then you get bored because there's no other tenor operating. There's no other dimension to it.
Hmm.
I was thinking today on my drive. I wonder if like the director would be pleased at how much I hated his film. But I also think like I probably hated it for reasons that he didn't intend, if that's fair to say.
Yeah.
If he wanted me to be shocked, the only thing I found shocking is that a movie could engender this much antipathy in me. And I was thinking like as a lead in possibly to a more interesting discussion is like what is it that makes a movie bad? Right?
Hmm.
Because I say with some certainty that this might be the most awful thing I've ever seen and nobody should watch it. But it is technically competent,
Yeah.
you know? So there's movies like Samurai Cop that are technically incompetent, but my value judgment of something like that or like Birdemic
Hmm.
is not terrible, you know? Like they're terrible movies, but I like them.
Yeah.
You know, they're badly constructed, but they're interesting in some facet. Like I gain something from them, whatever that says about me. Whereas this movie is just like a complete poverty of intellect, of soul, of wit, of anything that I would ever want from a film.
Yeah, it's like this. It's a poverty of intellect, but a glutton of the 16-year-old kid at the coffee shop intellect. Like that's the type of intellect that you're gonna get when you watch this movie. Um, it's gonna be a kid who maybe looked at the book cover of Nietzsche, right, and was like, okay, this is how I feel about life for the rest of my life now. It I think a good question like that question, it could be separated maybe into like categories, right? So you have one that's like of technical quality, you have one of acting performance, which I think is an important part of them of all movies. And I actually think that, I mean, Naomi Watts and Tim Roth and Michael Pitt were good. Like they did their job, and I actually thought that their performance was good, even though their characters all were pretty flat and kind of sucked. I don't know about the 97 one, how well the acting was.
It was all right. I mean I hated the R2 antagonists, but I don't. Possibly just because they were so douchey. But
Yeah.
like given the material that you had, I guess that's the job that you do. I guess you could consider that a good job.
Yeah.
But I mean, I believed that the mother and father character were feeling very terrible when their son got blasted in the face with a shotgun.
Yeah. So yeah, like I guess you can put that into the category of how you measure a good or a bad movie. And then direction is a big one, which is probably where this movie gets like a big fat just fucking F. Or screenwriting. I don't know if he was the one who. Oh, actually, he did do the screenplay for both this movie and the direction. So I mean, it
He
makes
must
sense.
have.
He
Yeah,
did.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the difference, right? In order to have humanity in your film, a core of something that's interesting, you need a good director. If it's an auteur piece like this, this is not something that's been pumped out by the Disney Corporation with like a team of writers.
Yeah.
So if you have one person helming up a film or any like massive artistic project, you're kind of looking at their soul in a sense.
No, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Definitely.
I mean, it, I could definitely agree with that, but with this movie, it seems like it's trying too hard to be too self-aware, and I just that kind of theme is it can be done well, but in this film, the way it's delivered in such a flat and dry and matter of fact way, it doesn't build to anything. So I don't know. I guess Jesse, you already said this. It kind of just doesn't become rewarding to care or be invested in the characters.
I think trying hard is a good way to describe funny games in nearly every avenue, whether it's plot, direction, narration, character portrayal. Everything is trying so hard to be something, but it never does anything, right? Like do or do not, there is no try. Is like it's just I don't know.
Yeah, in trying to be shocking, it fails to do anything else. What was the turning point for you? Because, like I said before, Alex gave me no value judgment, so I kept waiting for it to be good, and I think it was around maybe the halfway mark where I was like, this isn't doing anything. It's just doing the same thing again. It's like, okay, let's find another way to torture people sadistically while being like snarky about it.
hmm
What was the turning point for you, Jeff? Do you remember?
I mean, going through my notes, I have a couple things circled. I mean, probably like the game that they played where they're like counting. I don't know. It just at that time I was so bored, and it was circling back to they're like he's like counting, and they're like believe they're like chasing the family around the house while like one of them like makes a sandwich or something. I don't know. It was something super like corny and like look how casual and cavalier we are, and I just got sick of it, and I was like, all right, I'm done.
I found myself as a lover of breakfast foods just being increasingly angry when eggs started to break over and over again.
That's like 5 minutes in.
Yeah, and I was just like, I can't fucking do this. There's a point though where like they've started the games, they've started the torture, and one of them, in the newer one at least, he goes back into the kitchen to get eggs, and some type of like something happens, and there's some type of ruckus, and the eggs break again, and I just can't. I don't know. My least favorite part of the movie was the rewind. That was in the '97 one, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, they're shot for shot.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I didn't know how shot for shot, but now I mean, it's just he made it twice. I can't get over
He
that.
made it twice.
But yeah, that was my least favorite part of the film. And then the stupid little smirk at the end.
That's the point. That's the point where I stopped being like just bored and started being utterly resentful.
Yeah.
I think where I wanted the movie to fuck itself. I was like, "Get out of here, you smug little bastard." Jeff, you had an amazing joke the other day about this movie that I think people should hear because it sums it up very well. Like probably just as good as being tied to a chair and slapped.
Oh man. Well, basically, yeah. I kind of the whole time I was watching this, I was like, this movie is like drinking a cup of tea that has cum in it, like has cum in it, and the guy who came in your tea is sitting across from you with like his fingers laced, and he's just smiling at you. It's this sense of like look at look at the good I did. Do you like it? And it's just like, dude, go fuck yourself.
But you have to drink
But
it.
you have to drink it because you're like on a podcast.
It's like eating the custard in Dead Alive. After you see
Oh,
the spurt.
we may
go
have to
into it.
do. We may have to do Dead Alive at some point.
Oh,
It's possibly my favorite film.
maybe
Yeah,
to
that's
wash away this
crazy.
film in any way. Like thinking of like, we can cut this part out, but thinking of like episodes for next week, is there anything that like you guys watch to cleanse yourself of a bad movie afterwards? Like, do you throw anything on just to remind yourself that there's still like some humanity and some good filmmaking out there?
I mean, generally, I'll just fall back on like I'm a big rewatcher. That's my thing.
Oh, me
It's like,
too.
yeah, you guys are such a knowledge on such a wide amount of movies, and I know a good amount. But personally, I'm just like, I mean, if we ever want to talk about like movies that I really love and I've rewatched 1,000 times, like that's where I kind of rest. Is like I'm a big rewatcher, so I'll usually end up falling back on something like I really like Man on Fire, or some
Okay.
kind of just
Watch
like
Casino for the 9,000th time.
I am finally at the point where I don't ever have to see those movies again. Like I'll never elect to watch those movies. I'll never be like, oh, I'm gonna put on Goodfellas right now.
Yeah.
Like it's never gonna happen. But I'll put on like Man on Fire, or oh, Denzel is one of my big palate cleansers for some reason. Like Training Day is a movie I always put on.
You're generally going to get like a decent baseline level of quality with Denzel. There are some stinkers in there, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying. That's a good palate cleanser for sure. Yeah, I mean, personally, you guys know this. I've been doing my complete movie nerd project where I started like at the beginning of this year in the year 1939, the golden age of Hollywood. And I've been slowly like amassing a chronological watch order from there. I've made it to about 1953. So most of the things I'm watching these days are very good, albeit quite old.
Yeah.
I'm not watching whatever B zombie movies came out at that time. I'm watching, stuff by John Ford and Billy Wilder and John Hughes and like, Humphrey Bogart being a badass and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Such a genre of movies that I'm so unfamiliar with. It's like the golden age of Hollywood, like the early Hollywood movies. Something about like that type of old film I never really could fall into. I know that's kind of a blasphemous thing to say.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I find that people who actually, like being an English major, I have to say, I love reading, right? It's up there with film and watching films for me. So watching older films is like seeing these books on screen where it's long scenes, actors have to act, and there's lots of dialogue and very subtle little techniques that you can do. Because, I mean, there's only so much you can do with light, with color. It's all in black and white. So, like, there's certain things that it's just... You have to leave it all up to the actors and the dialogue and the screenplays, honestly, I think are just immensely better than they are today. Just because they had to be.
Well, yeah, that was back when like you made like 7 movies a year.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have these incredibly complex action scenes where the director violently shakes the camera and they cut like 9 times in a second. You kind of just had to work with your talent. Which is not to say that everything back then was good. It probably had just as many stinkers, but there is a certain quality to it that I don't know. I wouldn't say is lost, but is certainly not as ubiquitous as it was then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll put together a list of classics for you, Jeff.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's like the sieve of time filters out all of like the best of that era. And
Yeah.
like,
Indeed.
it just takes many more years after an era for that to like catch up. It's very delayed. So like the earliest movies I watch are probably like 70s, like the first Alien movies.
See, the idea of getting to those sounds amazing because they're like so technically superior to to what I'm still watching, which is part of the interesting. It's one of the interesting parts is it's like watching the medium evolve, and that's sort of what I wanted to do. Is it's like I think I was like that too, Jeff. I like my knowledge probably started in the 70s to any reasonable degree. With some smattering of earlier stuff, but I really wanted to just get into the entirety of film and see it evolve. And so, like, I'll see a movie and I'll be like, "Oh, who's this director? Billy Wilder? I want to see everything he's done." So I'll add him to the list, or an actor. So not only are you watching the techniques of cinema evolve as it becomes colorized and you get more sweeping camera motions, and you have the ability to put darker plots past censors. Um, Seeing people sleep in the same bed was pretty racy for a while. You wouldn't see
Yeah,
that, but you start to around the 50s. Um,
that's cool.
yeah, it's interesting.
That's cool. I would be big on the historical societal implications of how, art is portrayed. So definitely stuff like that would be like, oh, well, people were more willing to see on screen what everyone does at home, like such a weird puritanical streak in American cinema that was very strange to me when I first was exposed to more like, avant-garde French, German, Spanish cinema, more foreign stuff that just is more like, I don't know, more nudity, I guess, and it not being like a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, I do find that part of film history interesting, where it's like this, like the little facts, where it's like this is the first time a woman was seen in a bathing suit on
Yeah,
film,
yeah, exactly.
and like this is the first time a woman talked back to a man on film, and it's like, oh, okay, this is
You're like, what year was that?
you're like weird.
2019?
Yeah.
Weird that you had to record that, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says so much. I mean, even bad films. I was gonna say one of my biggest palate cleansers for some reason is Gladiator. I always rewatch that movie, and like I feel like it's just the epicness of it. I just like sit there and just let Hans Zimmer and Ridley Scott like blast my senses, for a good 2.5 hours. So I don't know.
I need to see that one again. It's been a long time, but I loved it. I have
Oh.
it on DVD. My friend Sean and I used to watch it all the time. We had our go-tos like that one and like Braveheart and stuff like that.
That's a good one too. Fury Road is slowly becoming one of those for me.
Gladiator is such a good movie. Like I can't get over how much I love that movie. It was one of those ones that like if you could catch it on like CBS or TNT late at night with like the like little bit of commercials, because it was one of those movies that like you have to just sit and watch. It was just such a great ride as a kid, and now even to this day, it's like even a movie I can get Jolene, my wife, to like watch with me in one sitting, because it's just so well done and well told in such a short amount of time. It's a relatively short movie.
You can't generally get her to watch movies.
Oh God, no! I can't get her to watch movies in one sitting. We have to like
That's the only way to do it.
exactly.
Yeah, it is the only way.
So like we have to like split movies up into sittings, or kind of, I don't know, just watch like a quarter of one and like take a break and come back. She just has a really kind of a short attention span.
TV shows should work well then. There should
But
be
then
like binge shows you guys can watch, right?
Yeah, we've binged stuff before, but she usually gives up. Like we binged Game of Thrones, obviously, like every couple in the planet.
In
But I
Westeros.
think, but usually like we tried to binge like Ozark and those kind of shows, but she just gives up after a while, because she just would rather like do other stuff like paint or something like that. So that's just how she is. But it's kind of difficult sometimes, because you're like, oh, I just want to watch this movie with you. So she has like no knowledge of movies or actors or anything. She's like, I have to explain what every actor is, even like the simplest of actors.
You're like, that's Ben Affleck.
No, she would not know Ben Affleck. If she saw a picture of Ben Affleck, she'd be like, yeah, like I've seen him, but I don't know his name.
Yeah.
That's the guy who was in South Park, right? Welcome to the Reel Weirdos chatcast, by the way,
Yeah.
because Funny Games is so fucking awful that there's not much to say about it other than it's a miserable pile of nothing that
Yeah.
nobody should ever see.
Fuck
Yeah, if
you,
you haven't
Michael
noticed-
Haneke. Fuck you.
If you haven't noticed, we've kind of just all in all given up.
Oh, they noticed. But
Yeah.
this is fun too. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's fun to just be able to talk about. But like really, like to circle back, I mean, I think that I don't watch many bad movies. Like but I really think that Samurai Cop is like the best representation of a bad movie, like a good bad movie. It just has all the elements. It checks all the boxes. Cheesy actors, bad screenplay, foreign director, just everything.
A wig that falls off during action
Yeah.
shots. The best comedy wig in cinema history.
And it just has like everything. When you say all those things, you're like, well, Funny Games has those to a degree, but it's really what's behind all that and makes it enjoyable to listen to and to watch is this sense of really trying their best.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so incompetent that
Yeah.
it's amazing. Alex and I were talking about this earlier, actually, or we were waiting for you, Jeff, because he rewatched it, and which says a lot. Because it's like you can almost get more, um, like filmmaking wise, out of a bad movie than a good movie. Because Samurai Cop, for instance, yeah, his wig falls off, and that's funny. But then you have like shot reverse shot all over the place where the reverse is filmed in a completely different location than what it's reacting to and has a completely different color temperature than the other scene, and it's just the most baffling thing, all the way down to like ADR, like weird ADR choices,
Hmm.
sex scenes that go on for like a shockingly long time. I also swear that the black speedo that is used about 7 times in the film is the same black speedo, and every actor is
Oh,
just forced to keep wearing it.
100%, dude.
There's a
Absolutely.
spirit behind Samurai Cop. There's like the spirit of filmmaking that it can sometimes the spirit is like a master at its craft and you're just like, "Oh, this is amazing." But there's like joy too in just watching someone innocently and vulnerably. Like it's so vulnerable in the spirit of filmmaking that you're like, "Okay, I get it." And this is actually enjoyable to watch. Um,
It's kind of adorable.
Exactly. Whereas Funny Games lacks there's like no spirit of filmmaking. When you go to like a CVS, right? And you see like the cheap little colognes that they'll have in like a glass case there. You're like, "Okay, that's Samurai Cop. I know what it's going to smell like. I know that it has this, fancy little like manufactured bottle or whatever. That's fine." Funny Games is like going into like a nice, department store, looking at colognes and perfumes and whatnot, and buying one that you think is supposed to be nice and tells you that it's really nice. And it puts off this aura of being like classy. And then it's just this
And then it makes you
pompous.
throw up.
Exactly. It's like we used the sweat of an anus from some random Vietnamese villager just locally sourced, and it's just so pretentious in its makeup that what comes out is just disgusting.
Vietnamese specifically.
No, forgive me. I mean, I still am on this like ethnic kick since the Holy Mountain, like riling up my Peruvian hatred and whatnot. So I've just been picking on everyone, I guess.
Don't blame him. Don't blame him. We were talking about Vietnam before the podcast.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go there later this year.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, a spirit is definitely one thing, but there is a untangible and an immeasurable and almost you call it the umami, to put it in cooking terms, of bad films. There's an undescribable or indescribable flavor to a good bad movie that sits on your mind and makes you kind of crack that long smile that you're just because you know what you're in for. But when a movie, I kind of feel like with like Barbarella. Like Barbarella
yeah.
was trying to be a bad movie. It was trying so hard. It wanted to be up there in that like that niche category of like this will be great and cult, and it's so fucking bad and boring. And it's just I can't.
Yeah, we tried to watch Barbarella on one of our B movie nights, and we got maybe 2/3 of the way and gave up.
So it's like that movie.
Damn.
You could check. I could see why someone recommended it though, because you can see like okay, it's got the dumb plot, the goofy characters, overindulgence in sex. Like it's ticking all the boxes of a funny B movie. But it's not. So what is that? What is that flavor, that spice, that's
Yeah.
missing?
It's an interesting question, and people better than us have tried to answer it, but it can only really be described as an X factor. You can point to all these little elements, but sometimes those elements fail in another movie. It's a I don't know. It's part of what makes movies interesting. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes it's really hard to define why they're great or why they're awful. Like I don't know if I've done a good job except by saying adjectives as to precisely why Funny Games is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Is it the worst thing you guys have ever seen?
No.
I mean,
No.
What is?
Oh man, I don't know. Probably some of that garbage that they used to play on like the Sci-Fi Channel.
But those movies didn't make you like hate them. You were just kind of bored, right? You're like, this is
I
bad.
don't know. Riccio is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Oh yes, I had an amazing experience showing Jeff the 1991 film Riccio, and just thoroughly like basking in his misery.
Yeah, this is pre-quarantine PC, and it was yeah, it was an unbelievably shitty experience, and I don't ever recommend anyone watching that movie.
I
It
mean,
was
Movie's
so
hilarious.
fucking mindless and stupid, and just
maybe one of the Fast and Furious films. I think it was Tokyo Drift. Might be the only one I've seen from start to finish. I fucking hated that movie. I know this one is going to cause a lot of contention, but Boondock Saints is up there for me.
get fucked.
I know, I know. I don't know why. I just like I don't want to say it's a bad movie. That movie just makes me hate it. I just like there's something about that movie that feeds my resentment.
Is there an analogy here to Funny Games?
Yeah, so that like Funny Games is kind of comparable because I don't know if it's worse because you asked like what is the worst thing I've seen. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, we've talked about how it's hard to define bad, and there are many different ways to. I guess another way I could ask this question is like, what movie did you hate the most while watching it? Like,
Yeah.
what engendered the most loathing in you? Because I see terrible crap all the time. I sift through piles to try to get something good for our B movie nights, you know. But those are often just like boring. It's not very often that I just hate a film, especially to this degree.
I mean, yeah, if anything, the Avenging Disco Godfather was like endearing to me. I like in a way that made me really enjoy the film. But yeah, I mean, Boondock Saints is up there in this feeling that you're describing.
And Jeff loves this movie. I don't remember it. I remember liking it when I was a teenager, but I don't remember why.
I loved it. I mean, I was also an angsty kind of edgy teenager, and I just kind of always loved it. I can't tell you why. I mean, I'll still watch it today. It's one of my rewatches. It's just a fun movie, and it's funny, and I just always it's kind of one of my like brain junk food movies.
Got it. Yeah, like My Cousin Vinny is like that for me. Um,
Love that movie.
I love that movie too, but I know some people who hate it. Um, I guess with Boondock Saints, just like to trying to describe, like the good movie or the bad movie, there's just like a something that exists in between the scenes or in between everything that you can't see that adds like that X factor to all movies, whether it's bad or whether it's good. I don't think that this podcast is like we're trying to identify this scientifically or whatever it is, but it's definitely interesting to dance around and to like think about being high on one's own farts and like the self-awareness and whatnot. How do you guys see this movie compared to Midsommar? Because like you guys had some of the same qualms as far as like the pretentious aspect of the filmmaking or the direction.
That's an interesting question. I was literally just thinking about Midsommar when you brought up the concept of just sort of being high on your farts. Because I did, of course, say that Midsummer was like watching a director masturbate for 3 hours. And I'm like, hey, can we do something else? And he's like, no. And I'm like, all right, but I didn't hate it. Like I enjoyed it well enough because it was well made. And I think like even though it failed in a lot of the things it was trying to do, it was still trying to do them. It was trying to be about like themes about relationships or whatever, and the variety of scenes was interesting, even if the characters did fall flat.
Hmm.
So, I don't know. Jeff, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Midsummer was a movie that had really amazing shot composition behind it, and an artist, no, sorry, a director and writer who I think they're the same person. I don't remember actually if
He might have.
Midsummer
Yeah.
had a different writer, but it's just a movie that has intent with a delivery and execution of skill. I expect with A24 and that type in Ari Aster, I expect something. He delivered something close to what I expected. We move on. When I go into a movie like Funny Games, I have no background. So for me, I'm going into it like as someone who's on a podcast and who's going to look at it analytically and try to like get something to say about it. And when I watch it and it's this fucking terrible, I have to wonder, okay, what am I doing here? What am I gaining from this? And that's kind of where I kind of lost it. I lost the thread.
Yeah.
Because they're both kind of like mean and sadistic movies that revel in sort of the torture of their characters.
Hmm.
But and I don't know. I guess I've gathered from almost everyone else that I've talked to about Midsummer who's seen it that it like scarred them, or it was a very uncomfortable experience. I just thought it was kind of fun. I don't know what that says about me. But like, yeah, those elements, like it didn't grab me tension wise because I didn't care about anything except for the filmmaking. But I was still along for the ride and enjoying the variety of it, and the intent counts for a lot, because
Hmm.
if there's any intent in Funny Games other than to be mean and sadistic and hollow and irredeemable, then I couldn't even tell you that it was trying to do that.
Yeah.
I think maybe it did what it set out to do. That just happens to be something that is completely awful to the core.
Hmm.
That makes a lot
I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like when I think about the Paranormal Activity movies, those movies in particular generate like a kind of response in me, because when I see like The Conjuring 12 or another iteration of a horror movie franchise, I go, okay, well, they're just kind of carrying on, but like I can see what elements of that I might be interested in. Paranormal Activity is a movie that is not written for me, but it does well, and it is written for a particular type of moviegoer, and that's valid. And I think that Funny Games kind of is that movie for angsty 16-year-olds.
Hmm.
Is it fills a gap somewhere
Exactly. Yeah.
for for a large group of people, but I'm just not one of those people.
I have to violently disagree about anything redeemable about Paranormal Activity. I think that those movies are made completely cynically because they know that like dumb audiences will gobble them up. They can make them for about $9 because of the filmmaking, which is this
Found
what would you call
footage.
it? Not found, is it found, just found footage?
It's like found footage.
It's like
documentary.
security cam footage, yeah, or whatever. The point is it's cheap and it's awful and it's just completely cynical.
Hmm.
I mean, I get it has its market. I suppose maybe that's the point you're trying to get at, but
I try my best to not put certain moviegoers in a category, like just to not alienate a large group of people.
Yeah.
I try not to like be like, okay, what I watch is the good and what you watch is the bad. It's like, well, if you enjoyed what you watched, that's the good. If you walked out of the theater with that feeling of elation, that high that you get after watching a film that you enjoyed, then it was valid. But I mean, they're shit. I'm not gonna like sit here and not say that like Paranormal Activities are shit movies.
yeah,
But
no, I agree. I just get somewhat violent with my with my critique sometimes.
No, well, I mean, that's fair for those movies.
If we're separating audiences and things like that, like 1 in 3 people look to your left, look to your right when you're out in normal everyday society. There's someone there that likes the Conjuring movies or likes the Paranormal Activity movies, right? Because they're good. They're good at capturing a wide audience, like a movie-going audience.
Well, Conjuring is James Wan. I mean, you can have your problems about it being like a haunted house thrill fest or whatever, but it's well made, it's well acted, it's a real movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has like a lot of talent behind it and decent writing. So it's like I wouldn't put that in the same category as Paranormal Activity. Maybe less so the Annabelle movies, like all those extended universe movies.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those. I hear that they're terrible. Alex, you've been jumping into those.
I'm
lately
going
for
through it
some
right now.
reason.
Yeah, I don't know why, but we were talking about this before in our theme of bad movies. I'm starting to get into the habit of watching bad movies because it's starting to help give me a more thorough toolkit or quiver to analyze better movies. I don't know why. I can't explain it to the listeners why that is. It's just sifting through a lot of shit, you learn to find what is gold and what isn't. And it's been fun, but they're definitely crap. I was going to say the similarity I guess I was drawing was more in the audience, like the blockbuster audiences with the candy and the popcorn and whatnot. If you
Gotcha.
find a person that enjoys this movie when they're angsty 16-year-old or even past that, I'm talking about funny games now, they will be the most insufferable crowd of people you will ever meet. And they will be the type of people as a film-going audience that you would probably want to alienate. If we were going to alienate anyone, it's going to be the people who like this movie, including my 16-year-old self.
Well, yeah, you can alienate personalities for
Yeah.
sure. Like the people who like this movie are the type of people who think the Joker was the hero of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you're just missing the mark entirely. So I definitely get what you're saying there. It's there are some personalities, but I just never want to take a stance that it's oh well, the movies I watch are the high class movies. I mean, which they are. Which they are.
Hey, we all really enjoyed Frankenhooker, all right? So.
Frankenhooker is a great fucking movie.
Oh,
so
dude.
I will watch Frankenhooker again in my life. I will never watch Funny Games again in my life.
Yeah.
My point is, we're not all highbrow over here. We watch a lot of dirt, and we love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, Funny Games is not cool.
It's just ego. Funny Games is ego. It's self-righteousness. It's self-indulgence. It's all of the bad adjectives and verbs and nouns that go with somebody who is too pleased with the story that they wrote. So much so that they spent multiple $1 million to do it again.
He made it twice,
Shot for shot.
shot for shot. Has anyone ever done that before?
Yeah, Da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa twice, I'm pretty sure. And I think that Michelangelo did the Sistine Chapel twice, I think.
There's movies that deserve a shot-for-shot remake by their directors that are still living. I can't think of many right now.
I know that Gus Van Sant did a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho for some reason.
That is interesting. It's definitely less self-master. It's not as masturbatory as making the same film that you wrote and directed again, right? But that's interesting. I haven't seen it. I've only ever heard it from you, Jesse. But that one is interesting to me because I actually like his movies quite a bit. Not all of them, but the ones that I've seen.
Well, you didn't love Sea of Trees?
I have never even seen that one. I really liked Finding Forrester.
Damn it.
And Last
Joke
Days.
failed.
He found Forrester in the Sea of Trees.
Ah, God.
Boom!
Oh,
Joke
God.
redeemed.
Was it?
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm not so sure.
Forrest
Cut it out.
Finding
Is
Cut it out.
Forrester.
Finding Forrester the one where Sean Connery
Yes.
teaches a kid to play chess?
No. It's a black kid who's plays basketball, but is also really into reading, and gets accepted to some school, and then he just happens to befriend a very reclusive, one-time like Pulitzer Prize winning author who happens to live in the apartment where they play basketball.
Finding Forrester's the type of movie that like your teacher, like your history teacher, would put on, like when they would roll out like the big CRT TV and like put on the VCR. They'd have like Finding Forrester, Remember the Titans.
Exactly, it's one of those movies.
And like Coach Carter, and all those movies would be, and like maybe like Drumline as like the newest one of those, and they would all be on the same thing, and they'd all movies just about like redemption through sport,
youth,
and youth.
Right.
Yeah, so it was one of those movies.
My favorite genre. No, surprising I haven't seen any of these.
You haven't seen Remember the Titans?
If I did, I can't remember it.
Oh yeah, you definitely saw that in high school for sure. Like everyone saw him Remember the Titans.
I don't know. I think in high school I was watching like Evil Dead movies.
No, I know.
Showing
I don't.
people.
I mean, literally in high school. That was like every movie that like every hungover teacher put on.
They didn't. Like, I don't think they put on movies for us, unfortunately.
Oh man, I had
not that I remember.
Lots of like days where it was like after a test, or like if it was like finals week, or even in the lull of the middle of the year, there'd just be like a day where exactly we'd have like this cart. Sometimes it'd have to get wheeled from another room because the TV was better, and it's this giant ass black behemoth of a cathode ray tube TV, and it's just they pop one of those movies in the VCR. And it's funny because I saw Finding Forrester for the first time in like a high school, my like freshman high school like counseling guidance class.
Called it.
Yeah, it's right on the money right there, Jeff.
No, I'm telling you, man. That's just how like those movies, like in a nutshell. Like that's the thing is, I went to a lot of shitty schools growing up. So like for me, I would just have I'd come into class and it would be like a Thursday afternoon, and it was like such a weird time for all the lights to be out in the classroom. You're like, wait, why are all the lights out? Like, what's going on? And you come in, the teacher's just behind the desk, like grading papers with her head down.
Probably drinking out of a flask in their desk.
And then, like, this shit would literally happen to me, where we'd come in and then she would just like come up and like either that fucking cathode TV would come out, or some they try to do it on like those old shitty projectors that never worked.
Yeah.
Someone had to like climb on a chair to plug the cord into. Oh man. Yeah. Nostalgia trips.
Lots of cool different ways to consume film in America as a kid and as an adult. Sometimes you just catch stuff in the most random places.
Yeah, just make sure to be your best American audience self and play on your phone.
Yeah.
With the volume turned all the way up. Make sure you crinkle your wrappers as long as loud as possible, and yell at the screen in an attempt to elicit laughter from your other theater patrons.
Eat food louder than you've ever eaten it in your life, and discuss the plot of the movie that we're all watching whilst watching it.
Oh man, we're not bitter. We haven't had bad theater experiences. Jeff, you had one. Oh, we'll wrap this up pretty soon, but you had one that was so great like a while ago that you walked out, right?
Yeah, I walked out of Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was so bummed. It was such like a cool. Oh man, this story makes me sad.
Oh no.
It was a really really rainy, like one of the rare rainy days in California. But it was a rainy day, and these cyberpunk movies are always like rain and water. It was just like the perfect day. I went out with a couple friends, my wife, to go see it at a local cinema that is not the main. We have quite a bit of theaters in our town, and it wasn't the main cinema, but it was like one of like the smaller ones. It was Roxy on the Square, and it was just such a nice little like theater. They were playing it. It was way past its circulation date, but they would have like play the older movies that had been going through circulation. We went through and sat through it, and there was just this older couple. I mean, bless them, but they just could not stop discussing the plot of the movie whilst we watched the movie. And it was that's fine if you're at home. But it was like they've never been to a theater before. Like they've never like realized that like we can all hear them because it's really quiet for a point. And so it's just so they just like sat there and I could hear them behind me and they would just be like this older woman. She would just be like, "Oh, so like there's a baby, so there's a baby involved." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I think the baby's dead though." She's like, "Oh no, the baby's dead." That's
and you're
awful.
like, "Shut the hell up!"
And I turned around and I was nice at first. I turned around and I was like, "Hey, can you guys stop talking, please?" You know, you try to like get the message across as fast as you can, as quiet as you can. And they just didn't do anything. And that I was like, okay, cool. And they just kept talking. And eventually, like, they were an older couple. So after like 3 times telling them and they're not like doing it, like, what are you going to do? Yell at them? Make a scene? So I just left, and it sucked because I was so stoked to see that movie. It was in like a kind of a rundown dinky theater in the rain. I was just kind of really into that. And
Oh man.
yeah, I saw that. No, when I saw The Martian, that was another shitty experience where this guy in front of me was just talking. They were just like talking about their day as if they come to the fucking theater like it's the cafe.
Jesus.
And they were just talking, and I leaned forward to him and I was like, "Hey man, can you stop talking, please?" And he turned over and he looked at me. And he looked at me square in my fucking orbs, gentlemen. And he was just like, "No."
Ugh.
And the rage, you know, and it's like, that was like a few years ago now. I was maybe like 24, 25. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to punch this guy in the back of his fucking head. You know, like for sure. Like that's what's about to happen. And I'm just sitting there through I had to watch The Martian again at home because I was sitting there through the entire movie just seething at this motherfucker. I was just sitting here just like, "Fucking, are you going to tell me no?" All right. I'm just like murmuring under my breath. And
You're like, "Motherfucker, I'm trying to watch Matt Damon play Matt Damon over
Exactly.
here."
I'm trying to watch them like rescue Matt Damon from space again. Like, so it was just, it was so annoying, and I remember seething, and I was just so pissed, and my wife was just like, "Hey, just calm down. It's whatever. This guy's just a dick. Like, just get over it." And I'm like, "Nah, dude. You know, he doesn't get to talk to me like that." It was just one of those like dick male ego moments, and yeah, I left the theater, and I was just like walking around, like it was just such a shitty experience. I think that was like the last Blade Runner 2049 was the last movie that I saw. No, never mind. Me and Jesse, we've seen a couple movies together since then.
We did. Are you guys excited to go back to movie theaters?
I'm so excited. I have so many movies I'm ready to watch that are coming up.
Kinda. Like, I enjoyed going to the airport with you and like watching movies and like the nice comfortable seats because, you know, little do people know who are listening, if they do, that our town was very late on getting like actually comfortable theaters. So one of the theaters in town is very
It's just unfortunate that it's such a gamble, you know?
Yeah. I mean, some people just treat it like it. Don't go to movie theaters people thinking it's Disneyland. It's not that type of attraction.
Also go to movies like later in their circulation. Like, definitely always go to a movie like it's like last week or something.
If you're like us and care about the silence and being able to, yeah, definitely. If you care about shouting at the top of your lungs to show everyone how big of a fan of Star Wars you are, then, I don't know, go the first fucking day.
Yeah, well, exactly. And like there's like, I think there's always good to like show that like there is a sliding scale of this emotion between us because I think that cheering when Captain America gets the fucking hammer in Avengers is like the dumbest shit in the world.
I'm fine with that.
So that makes
fine.
exactly. So there's a spectrum here that we're talking about. We're not all just like on that same page. Like when I saw clips of people cheering in a movie theater, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, what? People are cheering? Like like in the
Hey,
middle of the
That's
movie.
Thor's hammer, man. That's Thor's hammer. It's really hard to pick that shit up.
And it's funny because I don't watch the Marvel movies because I'm fucking superior. No, I just don't watch them because I don't like them. Sorry.
I do.
And so
I actually do.
when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god!" And my wife was just like freaking out. I don't know. It's just so silly. But like at that point in my life, like the most I've experienced too is I remember I saw Return of the King in the theaters by myself. I was maybe like 15, 16, and I was by myself because that's the type of teenager I was. And people stood up and applauded at the end of the movie.
Hell yeah.
As it rightly deserves. But that's at the end, during the credits. And even then I was like, oh shit, are we doing this? All right.
Yeah.
And I just like started applauding.
You know, for as bad of theater experiences that I've had, I've never had one where they paused the movie and went off to go make hummus, which happened to me while watching a movie with our friend Skylar.
Oh yeah,
Wait,
absolutely.
like not even get like hummus out of a container to
Dude.
bring it back to
Dude.
the couch?
to no, make it
Alex.
from scratch.
What?
I swear to God.
No
he
way.
didn't even tell me he was doing it. He's the worst to watch
He just
movies
left.
with.
He just left.
But he's like, he just pauses the movie, and I
Oh,
figure
God.
he's like getting a snack or something, and I'm sitting there for like 15 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck? And I go into the kitchen, and he's just like, it was either pesto or hummus, and I'm like, are you kidding? Are we watching this movie or what? You goon.
Oh my god.
Dude, that's him all over. He will just like start making like a fucking 10-course meal at the like right in the middle of like the climax of a movie.
I mean,
What?
Or could go take a shit for like 45 minutes.
at that point, it's like, okay, do what you need to do, but pausing the movie and forcing me to sit there in silence, I would be like, what is happening right now?
But that's the thing is, it's always a movie that we've seen that he needs because he's so like backed up on movies in his life. He just never really like got into them. So it's like there's really critical movies that we're like, dude, you need to see this movie. And so we try to watch it with him, and it just doesn't work out. So, you know, when there's home theater problems as much as there is like, you know, outer theater problems, theater problems.
I just hope he somehow listens to this and is like, you guys have to complain about me even in a podcast.
Oh man, yeah. I hope that he understands that it's all love.
Skylar, watch Schindler's List. Been trying to get you to watch Schindler's List for 37 years.
Damn. That's definitely one that
Well,
maybe
more
don't
like
pause
10,
it
but-
at any time, I guess.
Don't pause it to make banana pudding.
Yeah.
Just watch it. All right. Well, we've talked about funny games about 30% of the time and bullshitted the rest.
Yep.
And I consider it exactly what funny games deserves.
Yep.
So, Real Weirdos, signing off. You guys have any pressing things to tell our enormous audience?
Thanks, everyone, if you've stuck around so far.
Yeah, appreciate everyone who listens and continues to listen. Thanks. It's really just fun to do this every week.
It is. It's super fun.
it
What are
is.
we doing next time, by the way? We haven't chosen anything.
We have not.
Yeah,
I believe
I
it's Jeff's
don't-
turn.
Yeah, it's my choice. I'm kind of gonna contemplate it over this weekend of camping, and really kind of come to some kind of conclusion by then.
Do a
But
little soul searching.
Yeah, do a little soul searching. I want to pick something that my fallback is always going to be Romeo plus Juliet because I just think that movie needs a lot of recognition. But I want to have that in my pocket to
Yeah.
do.
That's your like fire axe, your
Yeah, that's-
emergency fire.
Yeah, that's like my trump card. I'm just
Got
like,
it.
boom. Okay, cool. We'll put that one in. So
Here's an idea.
Okay.
Do you guys want to do Tenet? Because we all like
I
Nolan.
knew you were gonna say.
Yeah.
I had that thought today.
And none of us have seen it.
No,
I was
and
sitting at work and thinking that today. I was like, oh, we're probably gonna end up doing Tenet.
I don't know what it is. I've had the opportunity to watch it several times. My mouse has hovered over it on my streaming services, and I just don't click it. I mean, I don't know what it is. I do want to watch it though, and I don't think like I'm not avoiding it for any reason. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is.
me neither. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that'd be good. Maybe.
All right. Stay tuned for Tenet, everybody. Real Weirdos. It's official.
Yes.
Tenet.
It's been real weird.
Oh. Oh.
I know. Don't do that to me.
It's all staying in. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
and we'll see you
everyone.
next time.
Thanks.